This is episode 7, and today is the last day of May, of course, as everybody knows. And today's topic is building your model to scale. And Al is going to explain all about that topic in his demos later on.
Yes, I will.
So, of course, here in the U.S., Canada, we are Anders Olsen, that's me, Al Mandarino, you heard him. We have a special guest, Scott Waltz, is on board as well. He's going to be taking part in the presentation a little bit later. And David I, of course, but he's doing other things today. His biannual duties at San Luis Obispo. Let's see, in EMEA, of course, we have Stephen Ball, Pavel Glavatsky, and John Harrison. If you would like to join the discussion, you can, of course, find the EMBTDD hashtag. You can check us out on Facebook. You can, of course, ask questions here, like a few of you have already. If you want to, you can send email directly to all of us by sending it to developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. And, of course, we are here on May 31st, so building your model to scale. This is the entire schedule. All of the other ones are available for replay. And, of course, in a week, we'll have multi-device data visualization, engineering, and scientific graphics, and then the season finale on June 14th, tying it all together. So the agenda, as usual, welcome and news, talking about the topic, demos, and then summary and special offers and Q&A. We actually do Q&A throughout. We've talked about this one before, but it's a cool success story. Robert Miller posted that he won a prize using XE4 about a month ago or so with CajunCodefest.org. $5,000 prize. Pretty cool. With an iOS client, and the Microsoft guys were very happy, so they offered them to get into clinical trials with their app, which is cool. We got some noise there from Al's side, but that's okay. This is Developer Direct, after all. Here is the replay link for the Rapid Prototype webinar. That was pretty cool. You live to code fast. You can check out the Rapid Prototype webinar here at embt.co. That link there. These short URLs are unfortunately case sensitive, so you have to type it in exactly like that. Or you can, of course, find it on our Twitter feeds and Facebook page as well. If you check out FireMonkey or Embarcadero. All the latest code snippets are up in the Rad Studio Demos on SourceForge under Rad Studio XE4. So you can see all of our mobile samples and iOS code snippets there. I had a blog. David talked about this last week, actually, getting the iOS T web browser to Zoom. It's just making one line of change in the implementation of T web browser, and you can get it to Zoom properly. No Mac, no problem. We've talked about this a couple of times. If you are looking at a trial, or if you have XE4 and you don't have a Mac, you can always take it for a spin at macincloud.com. They start their pricing as low as $1 an hour, and you see the screenshot here, of course, $7 weekly, $20 monthly. So it's a cheap way to get started. In fact, if you're still thinking about using the trial or haven't used the trial yet, you can use Mac and Cloud for free. You can use it for free with the trial for up to 24 hours in the first 30 days. So whatever comes first, 24 hours usage or 30 days usage, is what you get for free. So there are virtually no barriers to entry as far as testing out the iOS support in XE4. And PA Server, by the way, is pre-installed on all of their Macs in Mac and Cloud. So you can go ahead and deploy your apps to the simulator immediately. Just about the only thing you can't do yet, I believe, is deploy to your own device because it would have to come back. However, I saw an article about some solution where you can actually share USB devices over the internet to somebody else. But they didn't have Mac support yet. So whenever that comes out, I'm sure you'll be able to plug in your device into your Windows machine and then virtually make the Mac in cloud think that it's actually plugged into the physical Mac in the cloud and somehow magically be able to deploy to your device for testing purposes through the Mac in cloud. That would be spectacular. The Rad Studio XE4 Instant Trial is the fastest and probably easiest way, as opposed to installing the full trial, to get up and running and testing it quickly. It's also the only way to try out FireDAC. FireDAC is in the instant trial. It is not in the downloadable trial. All of the previous replays and upcoming replays will be at streaming.embarcadero.com. So feel free to check that out. Lots of events and online content coming, of course. Check our events page at embarcadero.com. So before we continue over here, I was going to go over here. So here's the replay. This is our blogs.embarcadero.com. There's the blog by Tim Del Chiaro about the on-device rapid prototyping replay. Here's my blog about the iAdd beta wrapper by Simon Choi. Virtual Tree, Abrevia, Orpheus, and PowerPDF and SynEdit now available for XE4. Pretty cool. So another third party on board is awesome. David I will be in Orange County and LA June 4th and 5th. And there's the instant trial available. If you want to click on that, just go to blogs.embarcadero.com and it's all on the front page. All right. So with that, directly into today's... Whoa. Firefox crashed. Close it. Ooh. That was interesting. Okay. So with that, into today's topic, building your model to scale. So definition of model. Of course, you can go to this page. You can probably find similar definitions of what a model is. It's a description of an observed or a predicted behavior of some system, etc., etc. You can read that entire description if you want. And of course, a model can give incorrect descriptions and predictions for situations outside the realm of its intended use. So be sure that you use the correct model, obviously. Software modeling is the practice of creating and analyzing software models, of course. You've all seen some software models, whether it be requirements models, concurrency models, process models, behavior models, class diagrams, UML diagrams of any kind, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see a lot of different versions of this throughout Al's demos. We will see for development models, for instance, the VModel, the waterfall model. For coding models, we'll, of course, object-oriented programming, functional programming, testing, DUnit, if we have some time. Al will probably do some DUnit testing as well. We'll see UML modeling, data models, metadata using RStudio, object-oriented programming models. And, of course, on the scale side, we have the size of the development team to take into account, the number of application users, the volume of data and connections. We'll see Scott Walsh will be taking us for a spin with load testing and optimization using DB Optimizer, I believe. And we'll have some demos on access the business logic with web services and data snaps. So,
for those of you who are on the webinar last week, we talked about Agile Elements. So to follow on from those Agile Elements of the webinar we did last week, so the question I asked myself on this slide is, what is it that model and scale refers to for software developers? So for models, as Anders said, there's different types of development models. A lot of us are familiar with the waterfall model. Maybe some of us are not familiar with the V model. So a V model is this, and what it is and what it represents is a software development process. It can also be used for hardware development. And it's also considered to be an extension of the waterfall model that many of us are familiar with. So instead of like a waterfall where we move down in a linear way, this process steps are bent upwards after we get to the coding phase. And that forms this typical V shape. So this V model, it demonstrates the relationships between each phase of a software development lifecycle and the associated phases of testing. So for example, when we get to unit testing design, we'll be able to use the Delphi D unit testing, and we have the similar in C Builder if you want to do that. So these horizontal and vertical axes, now they represent the time or the project completeness if you go from left to right, and then the level of abstraction, those are the coarsest grain abstraction being the uppermost, and then going down respectively. That's kind of the difference between a V model and a waterfall model that some of us are familiar with. So back to that slide and just drill down a little bit more. So we kind of took a look at the different types of models, right? V model and waterfall model. For coding models, many of us are familiar with this already, right? The object-oriented programming paradigm, right? So we're doing a lot of this in our Delphi and C Builder programming. So it represents concepts as objects that have data fields and those attributes that describe the object and all of this associated procedures, and we call them methods. And then there's another type of coding model called functional, or sometimes called procedural programming, and those treat computation as the evaluation of math functions, and it avoids state and mutable data. And then testing, as Anders spoke about, we'll see inside of Delphi. For those of you who are not familiar, we have a framework called DUnit that came from the Java JUnit framework for unit testing. And this is a method by which the individual units or the individual Delphi units or classes, those source codes and their associated data and their procedures, they get to be tested to determine if they're fit for use. So we'll see later on that the Delphi has the DUnit testing to allow us to do this. And then for models, so most of our applications has an application of Delphi or C Builder code, and it also has a back-end database. So we have full support for UML modeling of both about the code. So we can take existing Delphi or C Builder code, reverse engineer, give us the object-oriented programming UML models for that. And then on the database side, we have a great tool called RAD Studio Developer Edition that's included in Architect that can reverse engineer your existing database, get access to all the relationships, and also do forward engineering, both logical and physical, and we'll get into more details on that. On the scale side, as Anders spoke, things that we need to consider is the size of the development team. Now, if your team is disparate, maybe international, you may want to consider a source code repository. For those of you who know or don't know, we include the Subversion integration inside of Rad Studio, so that's pretty cool. And then for knowledge systems, such as Embarcadero's Connect. So those of you who are not familiar with this, Embarcadero has a product called ER Studio Portal, and it has a new user interface that's definitely more intuitive, and it's going to be based on this interface to Embarcadero's ER Connect. So that's a product that's being developed now, and it should be released later this year. So what it's going to give for you is it's going to give you enterprise-wide access and distribution of all of the Studio repository metadata to all developers, database administrators, business analysts, and also data analysts. So that's pretty cool. Number of application users, that's kind of important for scaling. And Andrew spoke about volumes of data and connections, being able to load test and both optimize that. And later on, we'll see Scott Wall give us a brief overview of a product called DB Optimizer.
Yeah,
we'll
sorry,
see how
Al.
it can help with load testing and optimization.
Al, do you have a lapel mic or something like that? It's scratching a lot.
All right, let me see if I can steady it. Does this sound a little bit better?
Right now it's scratched too.
Interesting.
Maybe it's a connection issue.
So
anyway, we'll keep going. Sorry about that.
Connections. We'll take a look at a DB Optimizer. It's going to be a visual SQL and database tuning tool for both database developers and DBAs. And then lastly, we'll take a look at access to business logic, either through our web services integrations or through DataSnap. All right. So with that introduction, let's continue. Oh, and for those of you who don't know, Embarcadero now has its InterBase database as an embedded database that you can embed directly into your iOS device. So in your iPad or in your iPhone, you can take the InterBase database and embed it directly into that device. So if you need a commercially powerful, fully featured, secure and encrypted database that fully supports ANSI SQL 92, that has fast, multiple reads and writes, supported, embedded inside the iOS, also on the Mac and on the Windows. And what's great about this, it's a static library that gets bound to the application, and that's why the Apple and the App Store allows it as a database and embedded in the device. So that's the to-go edition. If you don't need these types of commercial, secure, encrypted features, there's also a free InterBase Lite version, and it's free. No redistribution fees. Doesn't have any encryption. Still has all the great capabilities of the to-go version, with just a few of the limitations that are not in the to-go edition. And also the SQLite database, that's also embeddable inside an iOS device also. All right, that's enough for slides for now. Let's get on to some demonstrations. So demonstrations, my plan is to first take you through UML models. So to help us understand how to model to scale, we're going to take a look at some existing Rad Studio applications that use a backend database. So to help us understand both the application and the database, we want to reverse engineer both the application and the database. So we'll use Delphi's built-in UML modeling capabilities to reverse engineer the code and give us our class diagrams. And then the actual database, we'll use the Studio Developer Edition that's included in the Architect Edition, and that'll allow us to reverse engineer our data models and get access to all of the metadata. And then while we're in the code, we can run metrics on that code. So we could find out if we have a good, healthy object design. Because for me, when I run metrics, I'm looking for two things. I'm looking to increase the cohesion among the classes and reduce any complexity, so it's easy for me to maintain and write test cases for our classes. And while I'm in there running metrics, I really want to find the most complicated method, because that becomes a candidate for refactoring, once again, to make it easy for me to maintain and write test cases against it. And then while we're in the Delphi or the CBuilder code, we can run audits on that code just to make sure we didn't violate any coding standards and conventions, right? We want to find all those critical errors like dividing by 0 or any array index that is out of range. So we want to definitely fix any critical errors before we go into production. Let me bring up, so right now I'm in Rad Studio XE4. We're in Delphi right now. So for the first application we're going to look at it's a VCL application. So everything I'm doing here works on VCL applications, FireMonkey applications, and or FireMonkey mobile applications. So we have an application here that talks to a backend database. Let me just run it. Application comes up. We attach BCL styles to it. That makes it look a little pretty and great. So the application runs great, but we're not sure if it's a good design or a healthy design. We don't know if we violated any standards and conventions. So for that, for those of you who don't know, this model view has been here for quite a while inside of Rad Studio. So by switching to the model view, it automatically goes through the code and reverse engineers it and gives me a UML class diagram representation of my code. So here we're looking at about 15 classes or units that this code is made up of. So if we look at this model tree here, what it shows me, it's a logical structure and it's a containment of the hierarchy of my modeling project. So this model tree here, it provides me the logical representation of the model of this modeling project. So we see the hierarchy of the modeling elements in the project, the root nodes are the project nodes, and then comes the nodes of any namespaces or packages and diagrams, and then nodes of any other modeling elements are also shown in this diagram also. So let's say, for example, we want to drill down on one of these units, like the data module part. So if I select the data module part, it drills down deeper into it, and now we get this nice UML class diagram of the T mass data. It includes all the relationships it has to system classes. So that's really great. Without having to look at hundreds and thousands of lines of code, reverse engineer it, get a UML model picture of what it is. So now and what's also cool about this, it fully supports what we call live source, two-way modeling, meaning any changes or any additions I make to the model is automatically going to update the source code, and any changes to the source code behind here that I make here is going to update the model. So these models and the source code always remain in sync. So that's pretty cool. So the next thing I want to do is I want to check to see if I have this healthy object model, and I do that by running quality assurance metrics. So in the model itself, I simply right-click and say I want to run some quality assurance metrics. So these are the 11 categories of metrics I can run on my model. So for example, on the basic, I can find things like lines of code or number of classes. Some of my favorites are like under complexity. I want to look for things like cyclomatic complexity, and what does that mean? You get this nice description of what it is. It was a metric invented back in 1976 by McCabe. It has this upper and lower limit, where the upper limit is 10. So as it describes it, it's a cyclomatic complexity represents a number of cycles, and it measures the complexity of an individual method. Meaning, if I come into a method and there's more than possible 10 ways of coming out of it, using if, then, else, or switches, this becomes a possible complicated method. It's very hard to test and very hard to keep track of. So if we run this method, and if we run this metrics and it's greater than 10, then that class, that method becomes a candidate for refactoring. So let me run this set of metrics on this code. It'll go through all the code and give me some results that look like this. So it gives me results on here. Top level is here. As we scroll through the results, the red items are things that we've violated. To get a nice graphical picture of what this looks like, I click on the top node and say, show me a caveat graph. We get this nice graphical representation of what we just did here. So what this caveat graph is, the outside tells me the metrics that we ran. This red circle is a normalized line where we want all of our values to either be inside the red circle or on the red circle. Any value outside the red circle says we violated one or more of these metrics. So, for example, we see we violated maximum number of levels, number of attributes, weighted methods per class, data abstraction coupling. Now, for any of these other methods that are in here, you simply right-click on it and say show its description, and you get a description of what that method is, what that metric is, and the formula that's written against it to get it. So, for example, one of the things I like to look at is like weighted methods per class. That's a combination, like over here, weighted methods per class. If we look at its description, this is actually it takes each method in the class weighted by its cyclomatic complexity. So it says not only do I have complicated methods in that class, I have complicated classes that have complicated methods. So I like to take a look at that. And then to drill down, I can get each individual method in those classes. So I can go through each one, find the one that has the highest level of complexity, and that's the one I possibly want to refactor, extract out the method, break it up into two different methods. And to do that, once you find your most complicated method, we go back to our diagram, select the method, and then right-click and say refactor, and then you get the options to do refactoring. So that's what I do with metrics. First UML, reverse engineer, run metrics on it, find the most complicated method, and then if need be, do a refactoring on it to make it simpler, once again, to increase the cohesion of these classes and make it easier for me to write test cases against it. So after I'm finished with the metrics, I like to run audits on it. Now in this case, let me run audits on the entire project just to make sure I don't have any critical violations. So quality assurance audits. Here we have, there's 12 categories of audits I can run here. Now, for example, we're looking for things like array indexes out of range, or under branches and loops, infinite loops. So we want to make sure we don't have any of these critical, error violations. So I'm going to run all these metrics on the entire code base, and let's see what it shows. So the results I see here is it says it does find one critical error, which is an array index out of range, and it tells me exactly where it is, which is in here. So for this right here, I can say open up the source code for it. It's on line 82, which is right here. So I like that. It takes me right to the line of code. So right here, it says I have this critical audit violation that's going to potentially out in production give me an array indexes out of range, and that's something we don't want to happen. What it actually is, if we look at its description, it is this. So according to this audit, we're incorrectly doing this, and possibly out in production, this thing might fail. So we definitely want to fix any errors of audits before we move this application into production. I'm just checking on time. All right. I could take you through a few more examples of this, but I think you get the idea. So no matter what, whether it's a VCL application, FireMonkey application, or FireMonkey mobile application, you can do these same steps on all those types of applications. Right. So now this application also used a backend database. So we actually want to take a look at that backend database to make sure, once again, that the database is also okay. So to do that, I'm going to come out of this tool and use ER Studio Developer Edition. So this tool is included in Rad Studio Architect Edition. And it's a great tool to be able to take an existing database, reverse engineer it, and get a model of what that database looks like. So the database that what used in an example was an InterBase database. So I want to do a new reverse engineer an existing database. That application we just saw used this InterBase database here. I want to log into it. So the second part of the wizard says, in the model, do I want to include both user tables and/or system tables? In my case, I'm just going to pick system tables. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's eight objects in this database. I'm going to select them all. Also, for capacity planning, I can pick table row count and column average width. So that's also pretty cool. I like this part because many times when you create when these models, when these databases get created, sometimes referential integrity was not coded into it. So I like that I can infer referential integrity by primary key, by foreign key with indexes, by foreign keys with names, and sometimes the cases mix. You have upper and lower case. I'm going to say ignore the case. And I also want to infer by individual domains. So this is going to create a domain for each one of my columns. And I'm also going to reverse engineer the view dependencies and reverse engineer other dependencies if I have any stored procedures or triggers. And I like the initial layout to be orthogonal. I want to do it for all of the objects in my database. So it's going to go ahead and run through the database and give me this great looking model of what I have here. All right, just to make it a little bit bigger, I'm going to come up here and say zoom interactively, make it look a little bigger. I have two generators here also, part of my database, one to get a next customer, one to get a next order. So what I really like about this tool now, it generates for me this single logical model. So right now I'm looking at its logical model. So it creates this single logical model, and this is great for business requirements planning, and also generates this initial physical model of the same database. And let's make it as big as we had the other one. So this initial physical model it created, it's tied to the actual database that we just reverse engineered. So in this case, it was the InterBase database. So here we can see both the logical and the physical specific properties. So for example, under the logical model, we have entities, and then we have its corresponding tables here. And columns, indexes, and foreign keys are all here. So now unlike other types of modeling tools, this ER Studio tool, both the logical model and this physical model, they both have their own metadata under the covers. So that means any changes that I make to either the model, the logical, or the physical do not automatically propagate. So that's pretty cool. So this is a very good flexible modeling style here. And then if I was to make any changes to these models, then I can use this great compare and merge utility, which is over here, to make sure if I want to take the changes I made to logical, apply them to physical, or vice versa. So that's also great to be able to do that. So now I can drill down more deeper into this. So if I want to drill down in any one of these individual tables, like for example, if I want to get more understanding on the logical physical relationship, and that's done by picking one of these tables. And then there's a great tab here called Where Used. So if I want to know where this individual element or where this individual table's used in either my logical or my physical model, I like to use this Where Used table here. So a great additional benefit of this architecture is that it allows users to generate as many iterations of a physical model from the logical model that we created. Like for example, if I wanted to take the logical model that came from our InterBase database and say I want to generate it as a physical model, it's telling me a warning here that any changes I make cannot be undone. I'll say OK. So what's the name of this physical model I want to create? Maybe it's my InterBase XE3 database, and maybe I want to send it over to a MS SQL database. I want to take my InterBase database we just created now, and I want to actually make a physical model of it and put it into a Microsoft SQL Server database. And let's say we'll pick SQL Server 2013. Then we run through this wizard. Do I want to do it for everything? In my case, yes. If I have any standard templates to apply, I can apply them here. Any different default storage parameters I can add here. General options for generating of the physical model. I'll just keep everything as default, and I say go ahead and finish. Okay, so now what's cool about this, I can also say validate the model after it generates it, just to make sure there's no violations between going from InterBase over to Microsoft SQL Server. I'll say OK, run the validation. So the fact that no output came up here, we didn't have any validation, so that's pretty cool. So now what it did is, as you can see right now from our logical InterBase database, it created a physical InterBase SQL database. So that's also pretty cool. So there's a lot of other great things we can do here. So, really quickly, I like to do submodels also. Like, for example, a submodel. For example, I want to take my vendors and my parts. I just like to lasso them and say, now that I have them, I want these to be a submodel. Create it as a submodel. Maybe I'll call this my vendor and my parts model. So now I have this separate submodel, and this is great when you have these really large, robust data models that you can work quickly this way. Right, there's a lot more features and functions I can put in here, but for timing purposes, I can talk about some of them. So we spoke about being able to compare and merge. So for example, let's say at one point in time, customer needs a new attribute, right? Let's say we want to keep track of the email addresses for customers. We want to apply a new field for this. So for customer, actually I want to do it to the logical model. So let me go over there instead. So instead of doing it to the logical model, let me do it to the physical model. So let me go over to the main physical model for customer and say I want to add a new attribute. And we want to call it email. And let's say in this case it would be a varchar 50. And we'll say OK to that. So that's cool. So we can apply that. And it adds it here. Now, for me, this is annoying where it puts it on the top, so I don't like that. I like to take this email and move it to the bottom. I know with some other tools it's almost impossible to do this, but we do it quite easy that way. All right, so then the scenario is, all right, now I want to compare the model I have here to my actual InterBase database. I could run it through this. I'll just show you how you would go about doing this. I could run it through the compare merge and utility. And I could send it to an actual database. In my case, I want to compare it to my actual live database. Be the actual live database I have up there. Assuming I spell that password correct. So we see here in our physical model, we have a new email, and we don't have it on our actual database. And then I can run the merge utility to add it to the actual database. So that's pretty cool. So that was a quick overview of what's possible with this ER Studio Developer Edition. That's included inside of Rad Studio Architect Edition. There's also a full-blown edition of it called ER Studio Data Architect, if you're interested in that also. All right, so next we have, so we just kind of went over UML modeling, we went over metrics, we went over running audits, we went over ER Studio Developer Edition to show what's possible with that. And a few more examples. So this was an example of using UML modeling on a FireMonkey mobile application. Works exactly the same way. Run metrics on that FireMonkey mobile application, find the most complicated methods, and then refactor, and also run audits on a FireMonkey mobile application. It'll also find the critical audit violations, allow you to fix them before moving out into production. All right, at this point, I want to turn it over to Scott, and he'll take us through volumes of data and connections and how DB Optimizer can help with load testing and optimization. So Scott, over to you.
So thanks, Al, for the nice setup, and as you mentioned, lots of functionality in those tools. I guess I should start off by thanking for inviting me to today's the episode here, and it's always nice to see the other side of our business and the great functionality there found within the products. But right now I just want to talk a little bit about what we do with regards to load testing and profiling and really tuning of your database code. Oftentimes we sort of leave it to the DBAs to do a little bit of the load testing and understanding what's happening to the database. But with a product like DB Optimizer, we're putting that control back into the hands of the database developer or the application developer who's writing the code. So I just want to spend some time showing some of the features and functionalities of DB Optimizer. I've connected to an Oracle database today, and we support Oracle, SQL Server, Sybase, and DB2 with the DB Optimizer product. So Oracle is just the VM that I had running today, so I decided to use it. So this is an example that I'm showing here of what a profiling session looks like within DB Optimizer. And we've profiled here for roughly 30 minutes, and we're seeing some spikes in the action. So again, we're trying to visually represent the activity occurring on your database so you can easily know where you need to focus. So for us, it's pretty straightforward here. We've got a couple of spikes, one here, and then one at the 18-minute mark. So I'll show you how to dive into there and really isolate that. But before we go there, I also want to point out the filters that we have. So as a application developer, we may want to see how our application is applying the load against the database. Well, we can certainly filter by application. We can filter by username, depending on if we've got a specific user we want to watch. So again, multiple ways to filter the data. We're trying to put the control in your fingertips, so then you have the ability to find the trouble query and then fix it. So let's go back then and we'll talk a little bit about what we see here. So we're seeing information in green is actions on the CPU. Light blue is system I/O, user I/O, and I'll let you read the rest of the legend. But again, what we're looking at here are wait time analysis. We're wanting to see those processes that are waiting, because at the end of the day, any process that's waiting, that customer is going to have a negative feeling about the effectiveness of the application. So here are the two areas that we want to focus on. So let's just take this, and I'm dragging my mouse, letting it go. And now we're isolated on just that specific time frame of this whole 30-minute profiling session. We're drilled in and looking at this section. So at this point, we can see that we've got two queries and then some non-SQL activity that has been occurring on the database. One query is taking up 78%, almost 79% of the time within this sliver of the profiling session. So if I want to see the rest of the query, I can select it, and it'll bring it down in the bottom pane. So this query is certainly a candidate for us to look at to see and understand if this could potentially be the problem. We have some other queries that were also being executed, but certainly aren't taking up the time. I'll close this, go back to the SQL window, and I'm going to open this up. So we can also, as I pointed out, we can find the queries in our spikes by highlighting, but we also have the ability to look at the overall executions on the database. So sometimes we don't have those troubled queries, the queries that take 5 or 10 minutes jumping out, but we also maybe have the ability to find a query that we're executing within the application that's executing a lot of time, maybe thousands of times, and maybe that could tip us off to, why are we executing this so many times within the application? Potentially I have an issue with my code, or can I make it more efficient, the query? So we can do that within DB Optimizer. So here's the query. We'll go ahead and select it. I'm using the context menu. We can either run an explain plan, which if you're familiar with some tuning principles, we certainly have the ability to do explain plans, or we can pop it over into our tuning facility found within DB Optimizer. So this is an example of me bringing a query from the profiling session, but more than likely, as we start developing queries, right, we know about them before we put them into a profiling session, or before they're even on the database. We're writing them. We're authoring these queries. So not only can we bring a query over from the profiling session, but we also have the ability to just cut and paste or type new SQL text. But what's really interesting is the extract from database objects. So you're looking at a stored procedure that you're calling from your application, or you've written that your application calls, and for some reason we're seeing some performance degradation on that stored procedure. And more often than not, when you really peel back the onion and look into that stored procedure, there's usually one query that all of a sudden is now not behaving. The performance has gotten so bad, and the whole stored procedure feels the wrath of that single query. So DB Optimizer can parse through the entire stored procedure, pulling out all the statements that we can tune, and then it will allow you to step through and tune. So I have a tuning session that I've already executed, and I want to just show you some of the things that we can do. So here I have 3 different queries, and just to point out at a high level really quick for you, 144 cases. DB Optimizer ran through and generated 144 different permutations of this query. I challenge anybody to do that manually. It's a tall order. We've done it for the second query, and the third, we've got 21 cases. So here down below, this is where we start really seeing the power of DB Optimizer. So I'm expanding it, and again, just as we saw in the profiling session, we're trying to present things to you graphically, so it's easy to find. So here we're seeing the initial cost, the execution statistics. Now we're able to look and see, wait a minute, here's a rewrite. What did this rewrite do? Wow, it dropped the cost down significantly. Right, the elapsed time, about the same. If I go to this other hint, we can see that we're still seeing an improvement over the original, and the execution time went down. Well, what's the difference? Right? What did it do to change this query? So here, I'm going to select these two, compare the selected, and I can let DB Optimizer show me exactly what it changed. So here, the original, it used a not exist, right? The rewrite that DB Optimizer went in, it changed that and brought that into a subquery using a not in, and then it added some hints for us. There's the unnested hint used twice. We're also using an index hint. So again, DB Optimizer is going through, and Oracle is a platform that really allows a lot of customization. It provides, I think, close to 120 different hints that can be utilized, and too many for a human to go through at one time. So again, DB Optimizer is going to run through and try all those. So now we found the query that we like. So let's go ahead and we will select this query. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is our load utility. So here is our SQL load utility. So I'm going to set this up because I want to apply some load to the database. We're going to run it, let's make it 50 times for each session. We're going to do a random delay anywhere between 250 and 1,000 milliseconds. So what I'm going to do is show you how easy it is. We're going to profile the data source. So we've started, we're watching, looking for activity. And now I'm going to start the tuning run. So let's kick that off. And then toggle back over to our profiling session, and we'll start seeing activity occurring against the database. So again, I'm running on my VM here on my single machine. You're not going to see necessarily the results that we see in the real world. It's exciting when I go on site and see it in real world, pushed up against a development database and actually seeing the activity. So again, you're seeing some of the load as it's applied to my database, and you're seeing the different sessions, 4 active sessions, and then as we continue to work, we'll see some more activity. So again, DB Optimizer, using the load test to apply the load against the database, but more importantly, you're using it before. We try and have a product here that you can use early in the development cycles to save some time and net save money at the end. So let the developers have the ability to tune the queries and then turn over queries to the DBAs that they know are the most efficient.
For those who don't know, with our we always had, Delphi and CBuild always had access to web services and data snaps. So as you all know, that there's tons of REST services and RSS feeds that are available to us, the developers, to be able to leverage in all of our applications, including mobile applications. So many of us developers are asked to build mobile apps that can integrate with these in-place enterprise infrastructures to call this existing SOAP server. So I'm happy to say, Delphi XE4 with the mobile iOS support, you can create these great mobile applications that can call these remote methods defined in these WSDLs of a SOAP server. And then you can use the WSDL import wizard to integrate those SOAP interfaces into your mobile client application. So hopefully Anders can show us some of this cool stuff.
A little bit. Yeah, of course. And the short version of the history is that we haven't always had SOAP support, but we were the first IDE in Delphi 6 to put SOAP support into an IDE. So that was pretty cool to be first there.
That is correct.
So here's a couple of screenshots on the screen here. You see a SOAP web services client, a little misspelling there, but that's okay. This is the server, this is the client. Here's a small screenshot of a WSDL page and a Delphi Feeds app. Let's take just a quick look at a few things here. So some of you may have seen these before, but nothing like repeating a few things. It's a good thing. Let's start with this guy. So Pavel Glavaki actually wrote a web service that's sitting in the cloud here, and we have a mobile client. We're just going to ask, is this email address valid or not? And it's just the server is just going to run a regex query in the background. So if we click on the button, we go ahead and say get ireg expressions is valid email address. Okay, what exactly does that do? So we dig in here and see, oh, this is an imported WSDL service from here. We can take a look, and hopefully Firefox won't crash again. But we'll go ahead and take a look at that WSDL page. And here we can see, if we minimize, collapse these nodes a little bit here, we can try to see what's going on. Okay, we have a request that says is valid email address, and then there's a response message as well. And we have the main entry point, which is ireg expressions here. If we wanted to convince ourselves that this service isn't actually running locally, we can say this and see that it's running in the Amazon cloud here. Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services. It's in their West Compute Cloud. All right, so let's go over here and actually run it and see what it does. So let's see. We're going to run on the simulator. Just going to go ahead and run it. And as most of you probably know, we have the PA server sitting over here on the Macintosh side. As soon as Rad Studio gets to the point where it's getting ready to deploy it, it will realize that, okay, I need to launch the simulator. And there it goes. At the bottom of the screen, it's popping up, and it will show up on the screen pretty soon. And then the next thing it will do is launch our application in the simulator. And this is all done by controlling this PA server from the client side in the IDE. So there we have, there's a splash screen, there's our application. We can go ahead and ask it, is this info@acme.com a valid email address? We'll click on it, and it says, okay, this looks like a valid email address. Of course, it's not going out to the SMTP server and sending off a hello and trying to figure out if this is actually a valid email box. It is simply running a regular expression on the input and trying to figure out if it's a valid looking email address. So in this case, it'll come back and say no, because you need at least two parts of the domain here. So something like this would work as well. And it says that looks like a valid email address. So in essence, what we've done here is we have, of course, written the server ourselves. It's sitting right here. The source code for it. It's running in the cloud. It's not running locally. And then it has an implementation and an interface. And that is what we imported here directly from the server. And this is what you see when you do that. So we use a Rio, of course, as always, to talk to the SOAP service. All right, so that's a very quick demo of that.
Very cool. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure, no problem. And my work in progress that hasn't gone anywhere since I last showed it, unfortunately. More important things keep coming in the way. But this is essentially using an HTTP Rio here as well. And we're talking to the National Weather Service. So down here, we're talking to it. We get a geometric representation of, or geographical representation of a zip code that we put in, and later on we pass that on. We passed a geo coding into a call that is going to return the current weather for that particular region. So here's the Scotts Valley region here. We can run this on Windows. We can just run it in the test harness, if you will. It's a 32-bit Windows app here. We can hit lookup. It's going to go to the National Web Service weather service. It's going to complain about the icons because I haven't deployed them correctly for the Windows piece here. But it'll tell me a little debug information. Okay, the next 3 hours it's going to be clear, which is sunny, and so on. Let's see if we have some interesting weather in the forecast here for nothing except for sunny. That's what happens in the summer in Scotts Valley. Forecast page is supposed to have icons and low and high temperatures and things like that. So let's go ahead and run it on the simulator. Again, we compile, link, deploy. It pops over to the simulator. It will launch the application as soon as it's deployed over, and we should see what it looks like as an iOS application. So here's my zip code. I click the lookup. It's going to go ahead and ask the National Weather Service SOAP server about the current weather conditions. Here we go. So here's my debug page as before. Whoops. I click on the forecast, and there I get my low and high temperatures. So, it's going to get hot. All right. Perfect for Little League Baseball. Not. A little too hot, especially in direct sunlight. So apply sunscreen. Okay. So at some point, this will be one of the demos that will be put in that repository that you can all have access to. The last thing I wanted to show was the Delphi feed client that I believe Marco made. This, I believe, is in the repository, and Marco blogged about it. This is a demonstration of how you can use the Indy components, HTTP component, bare bones HTTP communication. We also have others using TCP and things like that. And here we have an XML document as well. So the point here is that we have Delphi feeds and we have the Embarcadero blogs on two different tabs in a tab control here. And we can go ahead. Typically, you would probably have the tabs on the bottom. So we'll put them on the bottom. You know, then we have a status line down here as well. So anyway, not the perfect design here. But what we can do here is when we click on this refresh button, it goes ahead and says refresh Delphi feeds. Refresh feeds, of course, is right down here. And if it's Delphi feeds right here, then this is the URL. So this is the actual RSS feed for Delphi feeds. We can go ahead and see what it looks like. So we should be getting back something similar to this. So more intrinsic type helpers, DW script, Delphi XE4 instant trial, including FireDAC, etc. when we run the app. Similarly, for the Embarcadero Blogs tab, we go ahead and grab this feed, which is the WordPress feed from blogs.embarcadero.com. So here we will have a Russian HTML5 builder blog post, a Russian Microsoft DevCon 2013, French post, the replay for the on-device rapid prototyping webinar, etc., and then the iAd beta wrapper by Simon Choi. And why don't we go ahead and run this on the device? So as you can see here, running on the iPad, it was made as an iPhone app. I could have made it as an iPad app as well, but it was made as an iPhone app. And then you get the 2x button, and if you hit the 2x button, it just expands it, just like any iPhone app running on the iPad. That's not a universal application. If I refresh the Delphi feeds by clicking there, you can see exactly those pieces there. We can click on each individual one, and it'll show you in the status line what the actual URL for each item is. Embarcadero Blogs, we can do the same thing. Refresh. It'll pull the feed, and here you can see the different items in that feed. And if you were here at the beginning, just real fast, I had one of the news items was that I submitted an update to my clock, which uses iAdd. For some reason, I'm not sure if it's a bug in the wrapper or if it's something else, but sometimes the ads go blank. I haven't seen it in production in a approved application yet. That's what's hopefully happening now. It's in review, actually. One of the fastest cycles for getting into review that I've ever seen, personally. But when you're in development mode and you're using iAdd, you actually see ads about iAdd itself, so you can click on them, see what it's going to look like. Okay, I don't know, now we're going blank again. But anyway, so real quick, I just wanted to show you what Simon Choi did there. You can check out my blog post for the entire project that he has. It's actually very small. Let's see, my analog clock is here. And I simply added his iOS library iAdd.pass to my project. And I use it right here. And then in my onCreate, actually on my form show, the first time the show gets called, I simply create an iOS ad, place it at the bottom of the screen, depending if, and this passes in the correct coordinates depending on iPhone or iPad, so it does the right thing. And then it adds the sub view, which is how iAdd works. You add a view on top, so the ads will be on top of the area where you put it, and it will always be on top of everything that's in that area, and that's how iAdd works. And if you're interested in the details, you know, you can just look at this. It's a beta wrapper by Simon Choi. Here's his blog. And he says this code's not perfect, just a guide to start how to implement it. So, and this is in beta. So anyway, pretty short wrapper for iAdd that he has here. So pretty cool. So let's see. With that, go back to the slides. You did the VModel already. We're actually at we're at 11:15 already. Did you have another demo you wanted to run? Did you have this Fire Chat up and running?
I can quickly walk them through a data snap just to show the difference between data snap and web services. So let me quickly take over control. So Andrew just took us through web services, and that's great. Another way to access your business logic. Another great way is through this technology that we have called data snap. So you can take all your existing Delphi and or C++ builder, business method, logic code, and stick it inside of this data snap service. So data snap is Rad Studio's components for building these very scalable, robust, multi-tier applications that manage your data safely, securely, and very effectively. So inside of this data snap server, there's going to be a server methods class where you can stick all your existing and reuse all your existing Delphi code and or your C++ builder code. And then you can create these great front-end applications, either Delphi, FireMonkey iOS applications, web applications. They can all connect to this data snap service, access the methods in there, and return the information back to the client. So let's take a quick look at an app that we have out there. So those that are not familiar with data snap, so there's a wizard. You run the data snap wizard. It creates this data snap service here. Inside, you're going to see this server methods file. So in here, we have this chat application similar to the GoToWebinar chat window that you're using to send messages back and forth. And inside of it, we have business logic that knows how to get the user list. It knows how to send messages, and it knows how to send messages to an individual user. So we took these methods, we stuck it inside a data snap service. The data snap service is this. If I start it up, it's a simple, lightweight Windows executable. And just like Anders showed you his application running inside an Amazon EC2 cloud, this is also running inside an Amazon EC2 cloud. So this data snap service you have here with those methods inside of it are sitting inside an Amazon EC2 cloud. And then the front-end client that we created as a Delphi FireMonkey iOS application is this. And what's going to be cool about this is this will be able to connect. So if we see where it's actually connecting to, so this is the Amazon EC2 cloud instance, its IP address, and that's the port we're listening on. So if I now connect to this, give it my name, let's give myself Al_iOS. And when I say go connect and log on, it's connecting to that Amazon EC2 cloud, that data snap service. It's calling those business methods we have up there, and I get the user list here. So this is all really cool. So we have a separate tab for chat window, individual users. So if I want to pick an individual user and send that individual user a chat, I can do that. So data snap, a great component, you know, to be able to build these multi-tier, very scalable, very safe systems. So you create these data snap services, you put your existing, you know, Delphi business methods in there. You can do the same thing with C++ Builder, put your C++ Builder existing methods in there. Like you have methods that know how to get to your backend database. They're inside of this data snap service. And then you can create what I'm going to call any data snap type of client, either mobile, web, or native. They all know how to connect to this data snap service. They're all going to know how to call the existing business logic methods that you have on there. Inside of data snap, you can add encryption and compression algorithms. So as the data is going between the data snap server and the client, it's compressed and encrypted, so nobody can take a look inside of it. So that's all cool. And like I said, these data snap services, you know, very lightweight services. So for example, this is another one of my data snap services, and this is my generic data snap service that knows how to get to any backend database that I have on the service. So if we look at the services in there, and with these data snap services, this is a great HTML5 JavaScript client that gets created for you. So I have this method up there called get data. So any backend database I have out there, like my employee table, I can send it any select statement. And when I execute it, it's going to hit that backend database, get the data, and the data gets returned as a JSON object. So you take this JSON object, it gets returned back to the calling client, then you parse it and display it any way you want on that on the client. So that's the power of these data snap servers, especially how you can reuse all that existing business logic you have. So at this point, Anders, I will turn it back over to you.
Very nice. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Weather's still nice, so let's go over here. So the Fire Chat will be put up as a demo. It may have even be already. I'm not sure. If I had actually prepared a little bit more, I could have had the same client. We could have chatted back and forth, but that's okay. We'll do that some other time. So that's it for today's Developer Direct, building your model to scale. Because we started a little bit late. It's now an hour and 25 minutes after we started. So apologies again for the beginning troubles that we had. Next Friday, June 7th, we'll have multi-device data visualization, engineering, and scientific graphics. And then, of course, June 14th, in 2 weeks from now, is the season finale, bringing it all together. Again, we have this Twitter tag, hashtag EMBTDD, at EMBTDirect. We have a direct email address for all of us. Worldwide, developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com if you want to ask questions. If there are any questions that you have right now that you want to ask on the air, go for it. Put them into the Q&A interface. There is nothing right there. So if you put a question in there, in the next couple of minutes, we will try to answer it. More information, of course, at embarcadero.com and on the developer network, edn.embarcadero.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter. Check out our YouTube channel for all these videos and replays, and of course also link. If you go look at Embarcadero.com under Resources, White Papers, Application Development, there are 2 new white papers. There's the Rad Studio XG4 Product Reviewer's Guide, and there is the Delphi Language for Mobile Development by Marco Cantu that you can download. All right, so let's see. I think we have a question over here. Can you summarize what DataSnap is for? So it's our multi-tier technology. It's typically a middle tier solution. So the DataSnap server sits in the middle between your thin clients, whether they be mobile or desktop or web-based thin clients. And the thin clients typically know nothing about your business logic internals. They don't know anything about the database. They don't know anything about your triggers, generators, stored procedures, or even what kind of database you have or where it is. They just talk to the middle tier. The middle tier then, the DataSnap server, is the guy that is responsible for knowing all those things. Where's the database? How do I talk to it? What queries can I fire? And stuff like that. And it exposes server-side methods that the client will typically call using REST APIs. So the simple client, like you saw earlier with the Fire Chat, we didn't dig into the details, but it will typically just do the simple CRUD methods of REST. So get and put and all those kind of things. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that was great.
And I just said CRUD, and I just realized that that's completely wrong. Don't. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, if the database method you have in there, no CRUD, and simply call them, it'll do the CRUD.
It's the DataSnap server that will do the creates and the updates and the deletes, not the client. Anyway, sorry about that.
That link I sent there for DataSnap Overview and Architect, a very good write-up.
Cool.
Some of you legacy Delphi and C Builder folks, you may know it as Midas. So it was formerly known as Midas. So DataSnap is now this great technology to create and develop these great multi-tier applications, and most notably for these multi-tier database applications. So full support for Delphi and C++ Builder. DataSnap is now independent of Midas. So DataSnap offers the great possibility to create these client-server applications that communicate through the internet, the local network, or the local host. So that's all pretty cool.
And there's a question here on any news on when XE4 Service Pack 1 will become available. All I can say there is stay tuned, or the famous acronym RSN, real soon now. Don't know exactly what to say, but it should be available pretty soon. And we will, of course.
DataSnap is also great for, a lot of times they get this question, I got my Delphi iOS mobile application, I need to connect and talk to a Microsoft SQL Server database. Well, you can embed Microsoft SQL Server database into your iPhone or your iPad, but those iOS applications can connect to a DataSnap service. It knows how to connect to the backend Microsoft SQL Server database, get the data, and bring it back to the calling iOS device. So that's another great use of DataSnap.
There you go. And just to clarify, what Al was saying is that there's no client for iOS for SQL Server from Microsoft. I'm not sure why. Did you hear the sarcasm? I'm just kidding. So
I got it.
So the DataSnap solution is one of the best ways that you can do that. What is better database for all platform? I'm not sure exactly what that means, but certainly to get started, you can use IB Lite for free on iOS. InterBase to Go and InterBase full-blown server are available on a multitude of operating systems, including Windows, Mac, and Solaris, I believe.
Correct.
Can we use FireDAC as well on iOS? Yes. I believe so, right, Al?
Yes. That is, yes.
FireDAC on iOS? Yep.
That is correct. And in the Subversion repository, there are a few sample FireDAC iOS sample apps.
Oh, cool. Great. I want to use one database for all platforms. Well, you can use one database for, if you want to use an instance sitting in the cloud or whatever, you can connect to it from every other application running on every other platform. So Data Snap and data connectivity is just a way of connecting to your existing database. You don't have to put the database on every single platform unless you want to. I mean, if you want to have a mobile database, for instance, you can use IB Lite, or of course you can use SQLite, so on. There's no SQL Server that runs on iOS, for instance. So if you're talking about using it in a mobile scenario as well as on the device database, then you can't do that with SQL Server, for instance. So, Al, anything you want to add? I think Scott left. He probably had other things to do today. So, thank you, Scott.
I know for our grand finale suggestion, we're asking you folks, the community, tell us what you would like to see in that grand finale developer direct, and if we could accommodate it, we'd be more than happy to do it.
Maybe somebody has a cool app that they want to show off.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That would be most excellent.
Developer Direct is all about taking risks and, giving somebody presentation rights if they have something cool to show off. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh, sure.
We've never tried that before, but we could.
That would be most excellent.
All right. So with that, we, due to popular demand, we have extended the introductory 10% discount offer on Rad Studio, Delphi, and C++ Builder XE4. Get the newest multi-device development solutions, including Delphi for iOS, and save 10% when you purchase by June 30th of this year. So you got another month to buy a 10% discount. Embarcadero.com/rad offer. With that, I'm out of slides. And thank you very much. Al, anything you want to add?
Nope. That was an excellent session. So thank you all for attending, and have an awesome weekend.
All right. It's been a pleasure presenting this episode of Developer Direct. Thank you all for attending, and we will see you online. And we'll see you next week, of course, at the next Developer Direct in 1 week minus 1 hour and 35 minutes. All right. Take care.
Okay, goodbye.